You know, uh, like I always say, having kids in Europe is a waste. It's a waste. Here are the reasons how having kids in Europe is a waste. First and foremost, number one, they will never look after you at your old age. They will never look after if they cannot respect you, if they despise you at this level of their life. What more of you becoming old? Will they look after you? Will they care for you? No, they will never look after you at your old age. In an African context, that is one of the reasons people do give birth. People do have children because they are thinking of their old age. When they are old, these children or these kids will look after them. But in Europe, it is overruled. It is cancelled. They will never look after you. They will never cater for you.
South African living in Germany for over a decade, and she's absolutely right. South Africans do not prioritize forming a community with other South Africans abroad. And I think there's several reasons for it, so I'm going to touch on 2 or 3 of them. South Africans generally immigrate for vibes. So despite the high unemployment rates, the vast inequality, the high crime stats, or the regular blackouts, South Africans are still not desperate enough to seek a better life outside of South Africa. So the South Africans who are immigrating are generally doing it just for vibes. They're doing it because they want to experience something new.
Living abroad as an African has taught me so many things. The first thing that it's taught me is that there is no place like home. There is no place like Africa, guys. Yes, there are opportunities in Europe. We cannot deny this. But if I had those same opportunities and resources back home, and I had to choose between living in Europe and living in Africa, I would choose Africa.
Good afternoon, Africans. I hope you're doing fine where you are. Africans have long been admiring to go to the West, to go to Europe, to go to USA. African leaders that pioneered the independence of our countries, many of them studied in the USA, in Europe. I understand that they went to study over there because we didn't have much of education back then, like the one we have right now. And so they had to go there, borrow something, and then come back. That is what is happening today. Now, let me ask you a question. Would you rather have children in Europe, or would you rather have children in Africa? You know what happens here in Africa? Europe, you know what happens in Europe? And this question is for those Africans living in Africa. Africans who've never stepped foot outside Africa. A Nigerian man has come forward and is advising Africans and all black people not to have children in Europe. In fact, this black person is coming forward and is telling Africans that having children in Europe is a waste of time. This is very contrary to the perceptions that we Africans, we have about Europe. Europe, we think, is that heaven. We admire everything that comes with Europe, fashion, religion, everything comes from Europe, and we admire, we perceive that it is so fine. But this man has a very contradictory story to tell about these perceptions of Africa wanting to have children over there. I don't want to say much in this video. Let's dive in this video. Let's listen to what he has to say, and then by the end of the video, I shall share with you my thoughts, where we shall also have deep, critical analysis.
You know, like I always say, having kids in, like I always say, having kids in Europe is a waste. It's a waste. Here are the reasons how having kids in Europe is a waste. First and foremost, number one, they will never look after you at your old age. They will never look after, if they cannot respect you, if they despise you at this level of their life. What more of you becoming old? Will they look after you? Will they care for you? No, they will never look after you at your old age. In an African context, that is one of the reasons people do give birth. People do have children because they are thinking of their old age. When they are old, these children or these kids will look after them. But in Europe, it is overruled. It is cancelled. They will never look after you. They will never cater for you. Number two, in their mind, you are just a woman that gave birth to them. Nothing more, nothing less. You are just a woman that gave birth to them. That child mother attachment that we used to see in Africa, it is not here in Europe. It does not happen in Europe. That is number two, why having kids here in Europe is a waste. Another one, number three, the government own them. The government own them. Number four, the government is using these kids, to in order to have control over you or to monitor you and have access to your private life as a parent. As a parent, the government uses these children to have access to your private life. They know everything about you through these children. How do they know? You will get to know that. And number five, the system, which is the government, is equally using them against you and against your husband and against your marriage. Because these children are like spies, in the house. Number six, they will never follow your culture nor tradition. They will never follow your culture nor tradition. They are being swallowed by the Western culture and tradition and system. Number seven, they don't see any need of you in their lives because the government provides them with everything they need. That's number seven. Number eight, they don't have compassion and respect for their fellow African brothers and sisters. Number nine, they see you as a stumbling block to their freedom. Number 10, why do they see you as a stumbling block to their freedom? Whatever they want to do, whatever kind of sexual orientation they want to have, they know that you as an African parent, you will not be okay with it. So they see you as a stumbling block. Number 9, they don't have siblings feeling amongst them. They believe in
don't know how to be international.
I'm a South African living in Germany for over a decade, and she's absolutely right. South Africans do not prioritize forming a community with other South Africans abroad. And I think there's several reasons for it, so I'm going to touch on 2 or 3 of them. South Africans generally immigrate for vibes. So despite the high unemployment rates, the vast inequality, the high crime stats, or the regular blackouts, South Africans are still not desperate enough to seek a better life outside of South Africa. So the South Africans who are immigrating are generally doing it just for vibes. They're doing it because they want to experience something new, or because they received a scholarship and have an opportunity to pursue their studies in a foreign country. And some people are even immigrating because they fell in love with someone and they want to be with them. Now, all of these factors, they remove the desperation part of living in a new country. Because when you arrive, you generally already have some security. You have a job, you have accommodation, and if you have nice enough colleagues, those are going to be your first community. They are going to want to show you around. So you do not feel the need to reach out and seek a South African community. And I think that's what happens with a lot of South Africans. This is very different from the other African nationals. Here in Germany, where I live, for example, in Hamburg, there is a large community of Ghanaians, of Nigerians, of Senegalese, of Zimbabweans, and other African nationals. And very often they host events that are centered around their communities and their culture, like Miss Nigeria or the Ghana Independence Day annual celebration. They will even have like an Afro Fest or an Amapiano music festival. It's not hosted by South Africans. South Africans, on the other hand, we might be a part of South Africans in Germany or South Africans in Europe WhatsApp group. And once in a while, someone might suggest that we meet up for a braai in the summer and we get to know each other. But that's just like a once in a while thing in comparison to, let's say, Ghanaians who own several Afro shops surrounding in Hamburg where I buy my hair products. And often when I visit an Afro shop, I might see a poster on the wall that is inviting the entire Ghanaian community in that area to a wedding or to a child's baptism. Or there'll be Nigerians who or people from Ivory Coast who own restaurants. Now, this means that as a Senegalese person or a Nigerian person, if you're craving a traditional food, you can go to this restaurant and you meet other Nigerians and you commune with them and you form a network and you get to know them, form relationships with them. This is something that South Africans just don't do. Personally, I do have friends in Hamburg who are South African, but they are not part of the South African community. They are part of my personal community, but that's very different from being a part of the South African community. I think another reason South Africans do not prioritize forming community with other South Africans is because of our history, divide and conquer. A lot of us were socialized not to trust each other. Think about how when you're a kid, you are told not to eat from the neighbor's house, or you're warned against accepting a plate of food that is specifically prepared for you so at a family event. And you're taught also not to share your plans and your goals with other people until they've materialized. And I think all of this socialization, it makes us subconsciously, perhaps even consciously, distrusting of other South Africans, or at least skeptical of them. We just don't feel like we need to create a community with them. Now, I think this conversation might exclude South Africans working and teaching English in Asia. I don't know. I've heard that there is a community there. But if you're a South African living abroad, tell me, what's your experience like? Do you have a community of South Africans? Like people who are not necessarily your friends personally, but they are part of the community of South Africans where you live. I'm curious. Share with us your experience.
Living abroad as an African has taught me so many things. The first thing that it's taught me is that there is no place like home. There is no place like Africa, guys. Yes, there are opportunities in Europe. We cannot deny this. But if I had those same opportunities and resources back home, and I had to choose between living in Europe and living in Africa, I would choose Africa. If you are in Europe or in the States or wherever trying to seek a better life, a better opportunities, that's okay. But please do not forget to use those resources and those opportunities, if you can, to invest back home. Build your life back home. Guys, life in Africa is sweet when you have means.
Now, after clearly watching this crazy video, yes, I believe that respect should be paramount. In everything you do, just be respectful. In Europe, you find that the government has protected the children to a way that the children are misbehaved and the parents can't punish the children for their misdeed. The government is actually encouraging bad behavior among children. He said if it were the other way around, this would have been a court case. The child would have been taken away from the mother would have been jailed. You know, some of you might say, oh, this one is a skit, it's something which has been scripted, it's acted. But no, it might be written and acted, but a representation of what happens in those Western societies. In those Western societies where children have no say with their parents. The children are already adults. Look at the schools in Europe. Let's not go far. I hear there are some schools here in Kenya or here in Africa where a child might go with their own clothes, but that is not the norm. It's like 1 out of every 100 schools. Schools in Africa are equilibrium. They want to set a fair ground for every child. Children should not make other children feel less of themselves. With the uniform, you won't feel less of yourself. That happens in Africa. There is a lot you can learn from Eastern movies in Asia, India, Japan, Korea. I normally see how much they treat their elders. If they want to greet you, they bend and they say namaste. But in Europe, you don't get that. Believe me, if this was happening in Africa, this child would have faced it really rough. In Africa, a child does not only belong to the parent, a child belongs to the society. When a child does a wrong thing, my grandfather used to tell me that child will be punished with anyone who would find him or her misbehaving. That's how much children were respectful in the old days. In fact, in Europe is where we are bombarded with these rules and laws. It's not helpful to incorporate laws that would fuel misbehavior. In Kenya, for example, I just remembered this. In Kenya, another example is we used to have a punishment. Children used to be punished in schools. And then the government removed that law of punishing children from school. Nowadays, in schools, primary schools, government schools, children are not punished. Students and pupils are not punished. The government had removed that. And tell me, if a child can treat the mother in such a way, how much will they treat a stranger? That's the mother. They're throwing eggs and throwing tomatoes, rotten tomatoes at them. Tell me, how will they behave with a stranger? Tell me, if that was the president of an African country, how would they behave? Take the misbehavior they are showing to their mother and multiply it by 100. You'll get how much they will disrespect you. Africans should know better, and Africans should learn. You don't need to take your child where there's so much disrespect like that. I would not. As a parent, no. That is my thought on this video. If you have any thoughts, further thoughts, you can share your thoughts on the comment section. Share your ideas. I will so much appreciate. And if you like, you can give me a super thanks. Subscribe to the channel. So much appreciate. See you in the next one.